$4. In 2005, the rate was increased by $6 to $190. This 3% increase was higher than the Nova Scotia inflation rate of 2.8%. According to the Bank of Canada, the inflation rate for 2005 indeed was 2.2%. So I am pleased to be able to increase the personal allowance rate by $10 to $200 per month effective October the 1st, 2006. And this represents a 5.3% increase over the previous year. And Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague, approximately 35,000 individuals will benefit from this increase, and it will cost the province roughly $4.2 million annually. So, Mr. Chair, I propose to my honourable colleague that indeed this is 3 years in a row, but this is the first year of my mandate as I make that move to the future and move forward, and certainly will commit to this House that, as is the case every year, we will analyze budget dilemmas and budget issues, and I'm pleased to be able to come to the floor in this, my first budget, with a $10 per month increase to that allowance, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Honourable Minister. In regards to the question that I just posed, I'm wondering if the Minister can also confirm that the indexation for the basic personal allowance referred to in the government's election platform will provide for the automatic annual and full indexation in accordance with increases in the Statistics Canada Consumer Price Index.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we make our way through different pages and documents, the question that my honourable colleague poses regarding an annual statutory increase, certainly my honourable colleague needs to know that if that indeed is the promise of this government and the platform commitment of this government, indeed it will be my personal commitment as well, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm hoping to develop relationships in the future as my role as the critic, and I'll hold the Honourable Minister accountable to those very words. Mr. Chair, bearing in mind that the recent conclusions of a UN committee which severely criticized Canada and the provinces for providing social assistance at levels that are inadequate to permit poor people to meet their basic shelter needs, why, I ask the Honourable Minister, has the government not made a promise to also enact legislated annual adjustments with respect to shelter allowance component of the social assistance rates?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank my honourable colleague for the opportunity to discuss the second component to this, Mr. Chair, that I'm very pleased to be able to bring forward in the House today. In 2004, of course, the shelter rates for single renters and single boarders was raised by $50 per month and $25 per month, respectively. The current rate for single renters is $285 per month. And, Mr. Chair, I am pleased to be able to increase the shelter rate for single renters by another $15 per month. Effective October the 1st, 2006, the maximum rate for single renters will increase to $300 per month. Now, this increase will assist nearly 800 single renters and carries an annual price tag of $140,000, Mr. Chair. Now, there remains a gap between average market rents in a number of areas in the province and the shelter rates under ESIA, and no adjustment has been made to family shelter rates for a number of years. So, Mr. Chair, I'm pleased again to be able to increase the shelter rate for two-person and three-person families renting by $20 per month. And effective again October the 1st, 2006, the maximum rate for two-person family will increase to $570 per month, and for a 3-person, the rate will increase to $620 a month. And Mr. Chair, this increase will assist over 5,400 families and carries an annual price tag of $1.3 million, Mr. Chair. And I offer to my honourable colleague that indeed, again, we see a positive step forward to assist those who most need our assistance, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the numbers and the government's commitment to this part and support of those who need it. But I believe my question was as to whether or not, I'm standing here in hopes that the government will look at this on an annual basis and continue to look at the increases. And in saying that, I just want to make a note that, if we look at the region of Halifax and Dartmouth, on average, and I'm sure the Honourable Minister is aware of this, the prices of rent have gone up. A normal 3-bedroom apartment runs around $946. A 2-bedroom apartment at a level of $762, and a 1-bedroom at around $552 per month. And in saying that, I just want to make it known to the Honourable Minister that, when people are facing housing situations, they're often taken advantage of by landlords based on the amounts that they get. And I guess that's what I'm hoping to convey to the Minister, that she'll take back to her government, that we should indeed look at this on an annual basis. I want to move on. The second part of the election platform that I want to address, again on page 12, states, the Conservative government would like to establish a new persons with disabilities allowance that recognizes that many Nova Scotians are unable to work due to a permanent disability. That's on page 12 of the platform. Prior to the enactment of the Employment Support and Income Assistance Act in 2001, people with disabilities received assistance pursuant to a separate legislative regime, the Family Benefits Act. Disability advocates did not support having a separate scheme to providing assistance to people with disabilities, as it served to further marginalize people with disabilities by presuming that. Along with all other people in receipt of social assistance, they cannot contribute to the workforce either, with or without additional supports. Such supports are currently available and provided for under the Employment Security and Income Assistance Act, the ESIA. According to the creation of the separate social assistance scheme, would serve to marginalize and disadvantage people with disabilities. In short, it would be a big step backwards. I'd like, Mr. Chair, to ask the Honourable Ministers, will the proposed Persons with Disability Allowance, announced as part of the government's election platform, recreate separate social assistance legislation for people with disabilities? And if so, what consultation has the government and the Minister conducted with disability groups with regards to the proposed new disabilities allowance? And what have those groups advised the government regarding the advisability of the separate regime?
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to my honourable colleague. And just to go, I will address your question in a moment, but to go back to the last statement again. Pleased with the shelter commitment that I'm able to make here in the House today, and certainly want to make sure that my colleague knows that I will continue to press forward. Certainly would be premature for me in my role as Minister to presume what I will be able to work my colleagues toward and what I won't be able to, but certainly my honourable colleague needs to know that certainly I'm pleased to be able to make the commitment today in this year's estimate, and that that bodes well for future years' estimates efforts on my behalf, Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague. And certainly the questions that you raise regarding the platform are indeed very important and very pertinent questions. And as we discuss and debate the estimates in front of us today, I have to remind myself that before I get ahead and move to years in the future, I need to address the estimates that are in front of me. So the estimates this year, certainly regarding the allowances and the commitments that we've made for this year, certainly pleased to speak to those specifics. Now, the specifics to the platform commitment, Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague, I cannot commit today. That would be premature. Certainly, as we move forward in the days to come, I will be in consultation, certainly with the Disabled Persons Commission and certainly the other member entities to create this Persons with Disabilities allowance to ensure that maximum benefit to our stakeholders and to our clients and all Nova Scotians are at the forefront, Mr. Chair. And so as we move forward in those consultations, certainly with the key stakeholders, I want to assure my honourable colleague that we will certainly do due diligence with regards to all those who are concerned, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I applaud the Honourable Minister for her honesty and her future efforts. I'd like to go back to the personal allowance and the increase of $10 per month. I think it has to be borne in mind that when the province first introduced Employment Support and Income Assistance Act, August 1st, 2001, the personal allowance it provided to the persons in need was $180 per month, which, if merely adjusted for inflation, would currently be over $205 per month. In other words, the budget announcements to take place in October 2006 regarding the increases for personal allowance don't even keep up pace with the increases in the cost of living. In May this year, in response to the reports of the Government of Canada and Nova Scotia filed with the United Nations under the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights noted the following. The committee notes, with concern that in most provinces and territories, social assistance benefits are lower than a decade ago, that they do not provide adequate income to meet basic needs for food, clothing, and shelter, and that welfare levels are often set at less than half the low-income cutoff. As of 2003, social assistance income for single employable people in Nova Scotia represented only 30% of the poverty line and 50% for the single people with disability. The most recent report by the National Council of Welfare says that welfare policies in Canada are in utter chaos and calls upon legislators to take action. The Council also states that perhaps this year, a dismal report will finally make people in the public life sit up and take notice and do something to remedy the situation. For its part, the UN Committee urged all levels of government to establish social assistance levels, which ensure the realization of an adequate standard of living for all. My question, Mr. Chair, to the Honourable Minister is, given the fact that the announced increase in personal allowance won't even provide the same purchasing power as when the government introduced the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program in 2001, and given that the United Nations has very recently urged the provinces to comply with international human rights laws by proving adequate social assistance, will the Minister announce that the Government of Nova Scotia undertake and review all social assistance rates in Nova Scotia and commit to ensuring that new rates will be introduced that meet the Statistics Canada low-income cutoffs?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and certainly to my honourable colleague across the way. again, the optimism that I would like to believe that this is just the beginning, Mr. Chair, that we will review, as we have in the past, we will review these rates on an annual basis. Indeed, this is the third consecutive year in a row with an increase. That bodes well. That provides a level of comfort and certainly a level of optimism. And certainly we review them continuously, and certainly will take all factors into consideration. Mr. Chair, I would also reference for my honourable colleague, as I've learnt over the last few weeks, the importance of some of the other programming and other funding that we're able to provide for our income assistance clients. And certainly those include the National Child Benefit, Mr. Chair, the brand new pharmacare program that I'm so very pleased to be able to bring to the floor of the House today. Indeed, our $130 million child care plan that I'm equally as excited about moving forward on, and indeed special needs funding that factors in on a regular basis, Mr. Chair. So indeed, with those other programs in place and the other funding opportunities in place, along with that optimistic continual review of the rates, I look forward to the days ahead as we continue to build on addressing the needs of those Nova Scotians who most need our assistance, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to say that the fact that this government is making an effort, and I'll acknowledge that. I also want to inform the government that, you know, I'm here today for a reason. And that reason is to speak out for the people that those programs aren't touching, to make known that there are people still living in poverty. So as these programs unfold, I hope, and again, as the Honourable Minister has stated herself, I too am optimistic. I want to move to the business plan and the budget, Mr. Chair, and draw the Honourable Minister's attention to page 6 of the Community Services Business Plan. And on page 6, the plan states that the trend over the course of the past 5 years has been positive, declining by 11% from an average annual caseload of 36,210 cases in 2000 and 2001 to 32,245 cases in 2004-2005. Further reductions of caseloads will become increasingly difficult to attain. Then on page 26 of the performance measures, it states that the department's target is to maintain the average monthly caseload at or below the 2003-2004 base year level by ongoing monitoring of client eligibility. And through you, Mr. Chair, I ask the Honourable Minister, shouldn't the determination of how many caseloads are on employment support and income assistance be the actual need in the province versus artificial reduction targets that only end up tightening the restrictions for people who are in need of this program?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague again, an opportunity to discuss something, Mr. Chair, that does come almost like a double-edged sword. While we celebrate, and indeed we do celebrate, Mr. Chair, in this province, the decrease from certainly from 1999 to over 38,000 caseloads to an estimated just over 30,000 caseloads for the 2005-2006 year. That is an opportunity to celebrate the success, Mr. Chair, of programs and programming and available assistance, the employment support programs that we have in place that indeed are successful in getting more Nova Scotian families back into the workforce and indeed back on their own self-sufficiency. And we're pleased to be able to work with those families and those individuals along the way to assist them in times of need when they do most need us. But, Mr. Chair, this indeed is a success to celebrate, that indeed we are able to decrease the caseload, meaning more Nova Scotian families are succeeding on their own, and more Nova Scotian families have the opportunity to experience that self-satisfaction. And I have to just take a moment, Mr. Chair, to share with my honourable colleague, going back to my years in the classroom, the unbelievable feeling of self-worth and the elevation of the self-esteem of young individuals that I know exists in adults as well, when we're able to achieve and do things on our own. And that indeed is something, Mr. Chair, that I take with me in this new responsibility of mine. And I know as we continue to aid and assist more Nova Scotian families, and indeed more individuals, to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and move forward, having assisted them along the way to the point where they are now able to do that on their own, Mr. Chair, I take great satisfaction in that, and will work to continue to decrease those numbers even more, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, you know, I'm standing here, and as I have said in my opening, I've been a home care worker for 16 years. I've worked on the front lines of food banks. And I can honestly tell you that, you know, the system, the quote system is in place, and the monies are budgeted to it. But I too have witnessed many people who are receiving benefits, but you know, in all honesty, they're merely getting by. They're existing. And the people that I've talked to and spoken with have told me that, you know, Trevor, we're tired of just getting by. Why can't we live? So again, I want to say that, you know, with the proposed programs that this government has tabled in this budget, I can only hope that some of those people that are on these programs do indeed follow through and eventually end up breathing and living some sort of life. And again, I'll say I'm optimistic. I'll go back to the business plan again, and it references increasing complexities of needs among the ESIA clients and multiple needs of children in care. And given that it is the case, I want to look at 4.8 of the estimates in the supplementary details. And under maintenance of children, the budget in 2005-2006 was underspent by nearly $2.5 million. The 2006-2007 budgeted amount for maintenance of children is a modest 2.8% increase over the last year, and it's still $2.5 million less than the $70.7 million budgeted 2 years ago. In the same fashion, if you look at the child welfare and residential services line, the budgeted amount for 2006-2007 is $1.9 million, which is just a shade above what you spent 2 years ago. Given the complexity of needs of these children, which you document in your own business plan, why are the budgets that directly affect children in care at or less than 2-year-old funding levels?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and indeed, thank you to my honourable colleague for taking us to the estimates book and allowing me an opportunity to speak to some of the more specifics, Mr. Chair, and my honourable colleague. Certainly, the maintenance of children represents the direct costs incurred by our 6 department child welfare offices and 14 children's aid societies related to the apprehension and care and custody of children. Now, these services include everything from counseling and family support at the prevention end of the child protection spectrum to full-service parental-style services at the care and custody end of the spectrum. There are approximately 2,000 children and youth in need of protection who, Mr. Chair and my honourable colleague, I understand are in the care of the minister. I went from being the mother of 4 to being the mother of 2,000. Certainly looking forward to those Mother's Day cards. Placement services for children in care vary from subsidized adoption and foster care to licensed children's residential facilities. There are approximately 1,100 children in over 700 foster homes in Nova Scotia. Now, the province has commenced a long overdue comprehensive review of placement services with the objective of improved services to the children in care of the minister, including the repatriation of some 17 children presently served in and out of provincial facilities. So the 2005-2006 costs, Mr. Chair, reflect declining caseloads and economies achieved through improved casework and continued scrutiny of contracted services, increased national child benefit revenues for children in care, and savings in our secure care facility due to staff turnover. So the 2006-2007 estimate reflects an additional $400,000 for increasing foster care rates, full funding for secure care, and the application of the NSGEU negotiated salary increases, Mr. Chair, for staff in the children's residential facilities.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I want to move on to the topic of poverty. And during the recent election campaign, I must say that, again, as in my opening remarks, I was confronted by numerous people. And, you know, through my weekly work at the local food bank, it is of a concern to me. Groups like the Affordable Energy Coalition, Nova Scotian Association of Social Workers, business groups, poverty activists, and others all expressed a deep concern over the impact of poverty on our province. Many are calling for poverty action plans and for the implementation of suggestions put forward by community services committees following the two-day forum on poverty that was held earlier this year. One of the measures the Department of Community Services has announced is that it intends to help families struggling to survive on employment support and income assistance. That they will allow families to keep, as was mentioned, 30% of their income tax refunds instead of clawing back the 100% that normally takes place. And through you, Mr. Chair, to the Honourable Minister, I ask this question. Since this is not the government's money to begin with, why not allow families to retain 100% of those refunds so that they can help buy better quality food, clothes for children, school supplies, and pay for the skyrocketing utilities and heating costs?
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that my honourable colleague has a copy of the party platform, so I don't need to table this, I don't believe, Mr. Chair, but if you'd like me to, I certainly would be pleased to. But I want to add to the record and certainly add my commitment to the commitment made by reading aloud, indeed, the commitment of the government to develop and implement, in consultation with poverty advocates, social workers, educators, employment experts, business and community leaders, a multi-year poverty-to-work strategy aimed at reducing poverty, particularly among women and children, and generating more meaningful employment through a variety of ways to improve the standard of living of Nova Scotians struggling on low incomes. And Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague, certainly that is a commitment made by this government and one that I certainly intend on keeping, Mr. Chair. And I would like to preface the statements regarding the allowable income by stating that my honourable colleague mentioned the work of the Community Services Committee, and indeed I had the pleasure of serving on that Community Services Committee for some time before being named to Cabinet, Mr. Chair, and the work being done at the committee level is indeed extremely valuable. And I know that many recommendations have come forward And I know that I was part of that committee as we sent some recommendations forward. And certainly, in my role as minister, I'm going to be looking at those recommendations again to ensure, Mr. Chair, that the valuable work done by that committee indeed is not lost on my ministry or on my department, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to make sure that my honourable colleagues in the House knew that I certainly would be taking a look at that myself to ensure that those issues are addressed under my purview. Certainly, Mr. Chair, when we talk about the income assistance, retaining a portion of their income, and I believe that's a 30% allowable, Mr. Chair, 30% allowable retention of their earned income. Again, that's a positive, Mr. Chair, because what we are trying to do, as I stated earlier, is support those who most are in need of our assistance. And indeed, when we take a look at the caseloads, the income assistance is based on a budget deficit, Mr. Chair, if I may. So the assets that our income assistance clients have are used to establish a proper amount that's required to meet their individual needs, Mr. Chair. And certainly we look at that on a regular basis. The 30% allowable retention right now is certainly something that, as we move forward in the days to come, we may look at other ways of allowing individuals to expand upon that. And certainly, Mr. Chair, as I referenced earlier, there are a multitude of programs available that I'm very pleased and hopefully we'll get a chance to speak about today in this chamber. The pharmacare plan that we have for our children, and indeed the child care plan, and certainly the National Child Benefit. All of those factor in, Mr. Chair, when we consider those budget deficits and where indeed we are able to provide that income assistance, allowing, of course, our clients to indeed retain 30% of their earned income, Mr. Chair.
To the Honourable Minister, we would request that you do table that document to which you referred, just for the record.
Certainly.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I just want to go back. I know I have so many important questions, and I think I can be assured today that I will go over some of these questions at a later time with the Honourable Minister. But I just want to go back to the question that I posed and give a small sample of one of the situations that I've recently had to deal with in regards to income tax. I'm not going to mention this person's name, but you know, she's a senior citizen that's being supplemented by the social assistance program. She's also a Canada pension recipient. And when she recently had her taxes done up, unknown to her, Canada Pension was taking extra monies out of her. So what had happened was that there was monies showing up as income. There was a $300 refund that was given to her. And when she called me, and keep in mind she's 67 years old, and when I found out that she was living on or existing on basically $7,500 a year combined, you know, I kind of said to myself, gosh, I'm either lucky or just ignorant to the fact that so many people in this province are living at those rates. But she asked me, is this my money? And I said to her, I said, look, you know, let me look into it, but I'm telling you now, don't spend the money. Because if you spend that money, you're probably going to lose it. But I'll get back to you. And I have to say that, you know, for somebody that's existing on $7,500 a year, living on her own, a senior citizen, you know, having an extra $300, you know, she's going to want to eat. There's going to be rent to be paid. And I find it very frustrating that what indeed happened was exactly what I told her would happen. The department found out and immediately took that money off her next paycheck. And I say that, and I wanted to bring this up because it's something that I want to broach with the minister, perhaps at a later time, that perhaps a better communication could have taken place in this matter. You know, perhaps a caseworker would have looked at this situation and said, you know, maybe we can take it out over a couple months instead of one lump sum. Because what had happened was that when the monies came out, all of a sudden this senior's left short on her monies to pay her rent at the end of the month or buy food. I just wanted to bring that case up in reference to that question. Because I think communication is definitely something that, you know, people in the department have to become better attuned to. I want to move on to, you know, earlier in this House sitting, I was able to table a resolution in regards to food banks. And I want to say that people on employment support and income assistance are the largest group of food bank recipients in Nova Scotia. And of these clients, the majority are lone parents who are responsible for feeding over 8,000 of the province's children. And the department has increased the personal allowance for adults on the ESIA by $10. Yet, in 2001, children's personal allowances were eliminated and replaced by the child benefit supplement, which is less money. And through you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister, I want to ask if the department would address the child poverty and food insecurity that's, you know, currently running rampant in this province by either reinstating the children's personal allowance or by increasing the Nova Scotia child benefit.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And before addressing again the answer to my honourable colleague, I wanted to just want to make a couple of general observations, if I may. Certainly, as I had already invited and indicated, I would welcome the opportunity to sit down with my honourable colleague and discuss matters that we share in common. And I look forward to being out of the House and being able to do that on a less formal basis as we move forward some of the issues that we will share in the days to come. And so I wanted to get that on the record, Mr. Chair. The second issue, though I would never speak to the particulars of any case any more than my honourable colleague wants to, I would say that I would like to discuss the particulars of the case that you mentioned in private, in consultation with staff here. Indeed, those types of cases, as a general rule, would not qualify for income assistance as senior. The GIS and CPP should be sufficient. So I do want to discuss that case in particular with my honourable colleague, Mr. Chair, to make sure that indeed all needs of all Nova Scotians are being best met by this government, indeed by my department. Now, Mr. Chair, to the question, certainly the National Child Benefit, coupled with the Nova Scotia Child Benefit, I am told, equals or exceeds the costs associated with raising a child, Mr. Chair, and therefore the coupling of those programs together indeed is able to assist parents. The other footnote, Mr. Chair, that I would add to my honourable colleague, he brought forward the good work that's being done in our food banks across this province. And indeed, there's no question that the individuals who work in our food banks and the individuals they serve are indeed very important and valuable. Food banks have been in place in many Nova Scotia communities for many years, with some receiving municipal support that has been continued, Mr. Chair, by the province. And certainly, I make the commitment today to my honourable colleague that we will continue to work with all of our partners, working to meet the needs of our vulnerable Nova Scotians through these food banks, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to move into the increases that you had spoke to in regards to housing, and acknowledge the fact that the province is making an effort. You know, some would say, be it small, to increase the allowance for shelter. And hopefully it will help some of the families that are struggling. But one of the things that, a lot of people that I've dealt with, and you've probably heard cases that happens, is that when there is an increase in shelters, landlords see it fit to automatically increase or gouge the rental properties that these people are trying to be housed in. And I just want to know, why is the department focused the majority of its housing money on for-profit developments instead of encouraging the non-profit and co-op housing where these people, are in more stable situations and not being taken advantage of by these landlords?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, the issue of housing, and affordable housing, is certainly one that we have been able to make great gains in, I would suggest, Mr. Chair. Certainly under the Affordable Housing Phase 1, just to remind members of this House, we were able, Mr. Chair, to exceed 900 units in this province, Mr. Chair. And as proposals come in, we analyze those proposals, we review those proposals. But indeed, Mr. Chair, I would review for this House that we had 570 new rental units, 178 home preservation, individual home preservation units, Mr. Chair, 104 rental preservation, and 6 new home, as well as 70 rent supplements, Mr. Chair. And that's just a small breakdown of the over 900 units that were able to be afforded to Nova Scotians under the $37.2 million Phase 1. Now, as we move into Phase 2, of course, we will be looking for additional units to be positioned around the province as need is addressed. And indeed, we will be looking again at a variety of ways to maximize the benefit that we can put these dollars so that all Nova Scotians indeed are able to access more affordable housing across the province, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Housing is a huge problem in this province, and I'm sure it's going to be discussed over the next few hours. I think a real definition as to what, a collective group in this province would term affordable housing. I think we have to come up with a real sense of what affordable housing is and not what the current standard is set out. I want to move on to early childhood learning and child care. The department states that funding for early childhood learning and care is a priority. Yet I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, if the minister can explain why the 2005-2006 budget for early childhood programs, as outlined on page 4.8 of the supplementary details, initially set at the rate of $52.2 million, was underspent by half, with only $26 million being invested into the sector. And further to that line of questioning, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if the Honourable Minister wouldn't agree that the funding increases are only funding increases if they're actually spent. I guess I would like to know, and in the early stages of this new appointment, maybe the Honourable Minister isn't able to do it, but I'm just wondering, where did that money go, and how can we be ensured that the entire $42 million that is budgeted for 2006-2007 is actually going to be spent?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And indeed, childcare is a priority for this government, for all Nova Scotians, Mr. Chair. So it was quite appropriate and prudent that the $20.4 million in federal funds designated for childcare was preserved, so we could turn $20.4 million for 1 year into a 10-year plan that the childcare sector has blessed. So let me go through a little bit in explanation of that. In cooperation with the childcare sector and parents, the department held a series of consultation meetings in August and September of 2005 to help develop what was then a 5-year childcare plan. Now, that plan was ready to be released when the new federal government came in with their $1,200 universal childcare benefit for all families and children under 6. And we had to develop a new plan, Mr. Chair, which we did, and provided our child care working group, who represent various elements within the sector, nonprofit, commercial, education, etc., the opportunity to review the new plan. Now, that group helped to identify issues in support of creating a 10-year plan, and a sustainable plan worth more than $130 million, Mr. Chair. So we have our $20.4 million in the bank, Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague, to his question, and along with the second-year funding of $18.8 million, put that towards the $130 million that will help the industry to begin creating new child care spaces. And on May 8th, Mr. Chair, I was pleased to be a part of the Early Learning and Child Care Plan announcement at the Leeds Street Child Care Centre. And at that event, Elaine Ferguson of Child Care Connections said, and I quote, "This plan will provide a foundation for Nova Scotia to continue to build on. It is reflective of the many voices heard over the past year of consultation between the sector and the Department of Community Services. And we're ready with the funding and will begin implementation in the coming days." So, Mr. Chair, just to repeat to my honourable colleague, indeed it was prudent of us to maintain that $20.4 million so that we could combine it and create a better, more sustainable plan for all Nova Scotians, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say that, when viewing the former minister, several months back when that proclamation was made, the announcement of the 10-year plan was to be put in place. It was on the news, it was on the TV, and I couldn't help but notice that, the actual owner of that daycare had stated that there was a waiting list. A waiting list of 450 children. And I have to say that, a 10-year plan, people are frustrated, people need it now. 50% of this province makes less than $25,000 a year, and we have, I believe, a situation where not even low-income people are struggling, but we have working poor that are struggling. And those working poor, they're just not going to be able to wait 10 years to continue again to have some sort of life. Because we want to live in Nova Scotia. We don't want to just get by. So I think, to say that you've held on to the money for this bigger, grandiose plan, I think it's like the healthcare wait times. It's frustrating to people because people need that now. People want to live now. They want their children taken care of now. And I have to say that, this government's cousins in Ottawa have destroyed the funding of the universal daycare plan in Canada. And the $100 a month, it's a taxable income that people aren't even aware of. I've had many calls on this, and it's frustrating because there's a divide in this province right now, and it's between the middle class and the lower class, lower income people. The working poor are frustrated that they're not going to fully benefit from these programs, the programs that the federal government have pronounced, the programs and the 10-year plan of the child daycare. The other thing I want the Honourable Minister to know, and I'm sure, Mr. Chair, she's aware that, in recent days I've had an opportunity to meet with daycare workers, daycare directors, and the way this plan is being rolled out is very, very scary to the non-for-profit daycare situations, and the reliance or the emphasis being put on these big box daycares, and the monies that are going to be allowed to open these situations with this 10-year plan. Mr. Chair, I'm frustrated, but again, I will say that in the days and the weeks upcoming, I will work with the Honourable Minister on some of these situations, and again, I'll remain optimistic. But right now, I just want to ask, in regards to the daycare, the $100 per month, at the end of the year, people are going to become frustrated when they haven't realized that it is a taxable benefit, and the actual gain out of that will not allow them to have that daycare need met. And the fact that a 10-year plan being rolled out does not meet their needs now. And I want to ask the Honourable Minister, with all but outright disappearance of the federal funding for childcare, what is the province's plan to continue supporting and building this sector now, not 10 years from now, to help the working poor that need it now, who want to live?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my honourable colleague raises a series of questions that I'm pleased to address with a few comments, Mr. Chair. And I guess I would start by reminding all members of this House that indeed in this upcoming budget, the provincial tax portion of that federal child care will be tax exempt, Mr. Chair. And so while I won't speak for the Minister of Finance, I can indicate that that is a positive move on behalf of the Government of Nova Scotia in recognizing that the provincial portion of this will indeed be tax exempt, and certainly would be inappropriate for me to suggest how the federal government would handle their taxation, Mr. Chair. So I will move on for a moment, though, to briefly outline over the next number of years. And certainly I realize that when people hear a 10-year plan, they envision the far end of the 10-year spectrum. So I'd like to specifically talk about over the first 5 years, really, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague, that's when we will really see this plan truly unfold for Nova Scotian families. That indeed, in the first 5 years, the plan will be implemented, and it is sustainable, Mr. Chair, for a 10-year period. So over the first 5 years of the plan, investments will be directed to the following areas. Indeed, family, home, child care, which is one that I hold near and dear to my heart. Increase in the funding to child care provided in a care provider's home. This increases the availability of child care in rural areas and allows a family-like atmosphere and flexible hours, and may be better suited, Mr. Chair, to infant care. And certainly specifically to my honourable colleagues' questions about child care spaces. A 10% increase in the number of licensed full-day spaces. And Mr. Chair, that's 1,000 spaces for families here in Nova Scotia, Mr. Chair. And in specific to that, an increased number of full-day infant spaces, approximately 200 spaces, Mr. Chair, as well as make funding available to centres for repair, renovation, energy upgrade, and accessibility. And certainly, Mr. Chair, the subsidized spaces, which are extremely important across the province, a 20% increase in the number of portable subsidized daycare spaces to the tune of 550. And I want to speak to those for a moment, Mr. Chair, because indeed, in the upcoming days, we are slated to put 150 of those on the table, Mr. Chair, and those will be made available so that families can access those in the immediate to come. And so while we talk about a 10-year plan, we have to remember, Mr. Chair, that indeed the first 5 years we will see the rollout of those spaces year after year, which will alleviate some of those wait lists. And Mr. Chair, I acknowledge there are wait lists across the province. My honourable colleagues' comments do not fall on deaf ears. I acknowledge that, certainly. And this is the way that we are going to move forward to address those wait lists. And indeed, Mr. Chair, if I can make a couple more comments We feel that this child care plan, this 10-year sustainable plan, is in the best interest of all Nova Scotian families, that indeed it is a blended approach, a made in Nova Scotia approach that joins together the availability of the federal dollars going into the hands of Nova Scotian families, along with the plans that we have for the increase in our subsidized spaces, as well as the over 1,000 new spaces that are created. Indeed, we believe, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague, that we are providing choices for families in Nova Scotia, and indeed it is those families who are best suited to make those choices for their children and their families, Mr. Chair.
Okay. It's just a few seconds. Honourable member.
I'll just finish up very quickly with one question in regards to people with disabilities. As I've mentioned several times throughout this process, I have been a home care worker for 16 years, and one of the frustrations with many people facing various disabilities is the availability and accessibility to enjoy their lives, to be able to go and visit particular businesses or restaurants or functions. And while I only have a short time to go into this, I'll pose one very quick question to the Minister. I just would like to know what funding is in the current budget to address accessibility to businesses and organizations.
Honourable Minister, Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And indeed, to my honourable colleague across the way, while we have a variety of programs certainly that exist within the department, the specific request from my honourable colleague, I believe, would fall within the parameters of Service Nova Scotia and their accessibility dollars, Mr. Chair, that are available to businesses and indeed to Nova Scotians for accessibility. So indeed, that falls with my colleague, Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
Okay, time has elapsed. We'll go down to the honourable member for Preston.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I first of all like to congratulate the new minister on her new post, and I'm sure the congratulations as time goes on, she'll wonder why she took this post. It's a pretty difficult position to occupy with many demands and very difficult decisions that have to be made, and I know the minister is up to the challenge, and I had the privilege of working with her brother in the regional council, and if she is the equal, and she'll probably say the better of her brother, it's going to be very nice to see her in this position, quite frankly. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask around housing grants to start. Most of my questions are going to be on housing today, but the housing grant system we have now it works very well as long as the people can meet the criteria, remember the income criteria, and there's enough money in the program. The big problem we run into on a regular basis is that the people are just slightly over the income criteria. Usually when the problem is there, it's a retired family with modest income, and when you're talking about, I believe it's 14 or 23,000, I can't remember the exact numbers, of the thresholds for receiving a grant for a new roof or a new furnace or whatever the case may be. In an older home, a home that people have probably occupied pretty well all their lives, it becomes very difficult when they get an answer back from the department that says, no, we can't help you, and they've got no money in a savings account, no way to fix this, and in some cases, to the point that they almost have to leave their home, or even worse, are living in very unsafe conditions. I was just wondering if I could get the minister to tell me if there's any consideration of moving the income limit up a little bit. I know there's never enough money in this program, but the income limit up a little bit, and maybe the grants a little bit larger, so some of those people could be taken into consideration. Now, it doesn't matter how much you move the income limit up or how much money you put in the program, you're not going to satisfy everybody, but some movement in both of those areas would be very helpful.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And may I begin by thanking my honourable colleague from Preston for his kind words on my family pride. And certainly I take great pride in the kind words that you have to say regarding my older sibling who sits in another chamber than this. And specifically, Mr. Chair, without dancing around a bunch of numbers, it's my understanding, Mr. Chair, that the income thresholds indeed are negotiated with CMHC, who put the majority of the dollars into the program, and therefore it would be in negotiation with them that those income levels would be set. So certainly any negotiations that take place, Mr. Chair, my honourable colleague can certainly rest assured that we will continue to make sure that we're able to maximize the dollars that we have for our Nova Scotian families and individuals who need those repairs most. And certainly as at any point when negotiations do take place, we will certainly bring that issue to the table.
The honourable member for Preston.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Minister. And I'd just like to get your reassurance, and I believe that's what you told me anyway, that at least your department will look at the amount of the grants. And again, it's a dicey situation, because the bigger the grant you make, the less grants you can do. The higher the threshold income threshold to do, the less grants you can do. But if you don't do the grants properly and you don't properly repair someone's home, it's for nothing. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the impression I got from your answer was that you will look at both the income threshold and the grant levels to see if those can't be improved to help many seniors in Nova Scotia.
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Indeed, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was just confirming that the two separate issues, one with regards to the income thresholds, certainly that is in negotiation with CMHC, and so certainly that would be something that we would continue to negotiate in good faith, recognizing the income levels of Nova Scotians. The other issue as to the dollar amounts for the repairs, certainly we have increased over the last 3 years the monies available to Nova Scotians for the repairs, for emergency repairs, as well as health repairs based on health and safety. And indeed, we have made available to seniors an increase from $2,500 to $5,000 repair level. So that's a step in the right direction, and indeed, my honourable colleague can rest assured that we will continue to move in those steps forward to ensure, because what we have to remember, and I know my honourable colleague is well aware of this, the more repairs that we can do, the longer people can stay in their homes. The longer people can stay in their homes and truly have that quality of life that they so well deserve, the better off all Nova Scotians are. Government, families, indeed all Nova Scotians. So certainly those repair dollars and the increase in the budget this year, as you see in the estimate book for those repair dollars, in my view, and I believe in my honourable colleagues' view, would be dollars well spent.
Honourable member for Preston.
I totally agree with the minister. I mean, if you look at the cost of housing somebody in a nursing home, probably at, I'm guessing the number's now about $2,500 a month or more. If you put $5,000 into someone's home that can stay there, only going to stay there 2 months and you get your money back as far as taxpayers are concerned. Plus, the individual has the pride and the reassurance that they're living in their own home and are usually healthier because they are. And it's important that the people that can't afford to look after their homes, that it's done in that way. Now, the problem is with a lot of it, and the 5,000 amount for repairs, a forgivable grant, is a step in the right direction. But often what happens, the roof goes, the furnace goes, the pump goes in a well. Everything seems to happen within a year of that. is there any consideration for health and safety reasons, and I stress health and safety reasons for seniors, that they can get more than one grant in the I believe it's a 5-year waiting period, so if the roof and the furnace, I mean for catastrophic things, not just because they need new windows because they look better or they might heat the house a little bit better, but I mean catastrophic things you require to live, that they can have grants more often than the 5-year, I believe it's a 5-year period.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And a couple of comments, if I could, in direct response to the question. Indeed, the program that you're referencing is the RAP program, and as my colleague would well understand, that's a federally regulated program. So where I can't change those regulations, certainly we can work with our federal counterparts and colleagues to make sure that indeed those repairs that need to be done for health and safety reasons can be done. So certainly that's something that I'll take forward in negotiations and in discussion, Mr. Chair, to make sure that, as my honourable colleague indicated, the longer we can keep seniors in their homes, the better. And indeed, the point that you made regarding the couple of months, which provides a lessening effect for the Department of Health, I believe that was likely part of the negotiations as to why the Department of Health has funded our repair program actually to the tune of $1 million this year. So you'll find in the estimate books $1 million from the Department of Health to our department to provide for just exactly what my honourable colleague was referencing, these repairs for health and safety reasons for our seniors, the most needy sometimes, Mr. Chair, in the province.
Honourable Member for Preston.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that the minister is moving in that direction. Now, I'm going to go on to another specific case this time. This one is not a very happy one that the minister was not involved in. She wasn't even elected at the time. But this is a specific case. I realize that the minister cannot divulge particular information on an individual, but this has been in the newspapers, and it's a real tragedy. It's a real tragedy. Now, what happened last year? There was a lady who lives in Cherrybrook that had her house repossessed by the department. I'm going to give you some history on this. This is a really unfortunate, sad story. It should not have happened. In 1984, a mortgage was taken out for 20 years for $48,000 on a very nice home. It's a 3-bedroom home for a family of a gentleman that actually worked at that time for the Department of Housing. Actual employee of Department of Housing. A position he held between 25 and 30 years for the department. Now, in 1984, $48,000 mortgage, of course, the interest rate at that time was 13.5%, which in 1984 was not a bad deal. Today's terms, it's a terrible deal. But you have to go with the terms of the day, and that was a good deal. And it's the only way that these two people and their family, because they had children at home, a large family at home, could afford to buy this home. And was a wonderful thing that happened for them. Unfortunately, the gentleman died in early 2000s. I don't know if it was 2000 or 2001 in that time. He died, and therefore his income brought into the household was reduced. And he had retired in the meantime from the Department of Housing. And when he passed away, of course, his income reduced. And his widow got in a situation where she was faced with paying a mortgage, and the mortgage payments at that time, if I could just give me a second here to go through my notes I have here, were about $700 a month. Now, $700 a month in mortgage payments today is not very high. But for a lady that has very limited income, that's a senior, that $700 a month was impossible, absolutely impossible. And add to this problem was the lady is illiterate. She cannot read or write. So when the department sent out bills, sent out notices, she just laid them aside. Had no idea what they were for. And unfortunately, by the time this was brought to her attention, by some of her relatives that come home to read these things and said, look, you better look after this, it was too late. The house had already gone for sale, or to the legal process for sale. Now at this time, the remaining mortgage was $31,000. Now they paid diligently between 1984 and 2001 on this mortgage, and only reduced the thing down to $31,000 for $48,000. They paid $110,000 in interest back into the system. $110,000. Well, the dilemma gets worse. The total amount of arrears that were required at that time were $3,600. $3,600, because she'd been paying what she could pay on the mortgage all the way along, which sometimes wasn't very good, very much. Well, when the house went for sale, they sold the house at auction for $55,000. So the house was still in pretty good shape. It needed some work, and that wasn't the issue. Wasn't the issue at all. So with the $55,000 option, and this is her home that was built for her and her deceased husband and her family. So her home was going away. So the family at this time got involved and said, well, we're going to have to get this house. I mean, you know, the lady will be emotionally destroyed, absolutely emotionally destroyed. Now, when the thing was all said and done, and the family bought the building back with the way they had to do it, and I won't go into the details of that, but on a personal basis, I could tell you what the details were. It cost the family over $100,000 to buy out the $31,000 mortgage that originally was there. By the time the legal fees were added, and a gentleman bought the property, and a speculator bought the property, the only way to get it back from them, they had to pay $75,000 to buy the property back. And it's just a horrible story. And in amongst all this, and I met with staff in the department regarding this case, amongst all this, nobody in the department went out and actually sit down and talked to the lady and said, this is the problem. And when the process started to go through, which is the way I handle problems of this nature in my community, and I'm sure you would do the same as MLA in your area, that didn't happen. So the lady didn't understand what was happening to her and her home. So as this thing progressed, things got worse and worse and worse. One good thing about the deal was, when it sold at auction for $55,000, the family did get $14,000 back, which was eaten up by the new mortgage they had to put in place, which really didn't help a whole lot. What had to happen, her daughter and her daughter's husband and family had to move into the home, sell their home to buy this home. Really tragic story. This unbelievable story. And when you look back at how this was handled, when you look at the paperwork, and your department was very generous with the information they gave me, and I thank them for that. It was handled the way on paper it should be handled. On paper. I think the paper's got to be changed. It has to be changed. Number one, people should go out and do a personal visit and talk to the people and explain to them what could happen before it gets to lawyers that are going to take it to a tax sale. Or not tax sale, but a repossession sale. That has got to change in the department. That has to change. The other thing that has to happen, especially with this gentleman was an employee of the Department of Housing, it makes it even more tragic. And that, you know, there should be support within the government ranks for with colleagues that work in the department. That should be there as well. I mean, not special treatment, but there should be some extra effort put into coming forward and saying, look, this is one of our own workers here. What has gone wrong? Why aren't these payments being made? and actually sit down and go through what the situation was. And then make it even more complicated, the family who clearly told the department and told the lawyer that was looking after this, who did nothing wrong, the lawyer didn't do anything wrong. He processed this as he's supposed to do, as the contract had with the Department of Housing, went to him and said, look, we're trying to negotiate a mortgage on this. It's going to take us some time to do that. They wouldn't even give them the time. Housing wouldn't extend that situation to give them the time to put this in place. That's why it sold. At auction, they couldn't get the financing in place quick enough to buy out the $31,000 mortgage or even go to bid it at the auction to buy it. They couldn't guarantee that they would have the funding. That's something else that's got to change. It's got to change in the department that if the family is truly doing that, is truly doing it, and that's easily checked out. You can go to the financial institution, get a letter from them and say, yes, we're working on this, but it's going to take us this length of time to get it done. That has to change. So when all this is done, here's a situation with a young family, with children, living with their mother, which is a good situation if that's exactly what the family wanted to do all the way around. And it's a very happy situation. This is a very happy situation in that regard, because they're all wonderful people and they love living together. But a young family that should be in their own home had to sell their home to pay out the mortgage on this one for the family. Now, not a lot of families would do that. That's how serious this was to the family. Now, I can go on with all these details and indicate that, what has to be done here. I really believe, this is my own personal opinion, I would like to sit down with the minister and go through this in detail with one of the family members to describe exactly what's happened. And I'd like the commitment, first of all, from the minister that you would do that.
Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And one thing that I'm sure my honourable colleague and all honourable colleagues in this House will agree to is sometimes some of the stories and some of the situations that we find ourselves in as MLAs are truly heartbreaking. And I can tell from the passion in my honourable colleague's voice that this indeed was one that he was very passionate about and indeed is very sad. As you indicated, Mr. Chair, through you to my honourable colleague, as he indicated, if indeed a family chooses to come together and support each other by choice, then that's a cause to celebrate. If it's done out of necessity, then unforeseen circumstances, then indeed that's a different case altogether. So certainly, let me state for the record, Mr. Chair, that absolutely I would meet with my honourable colleague and certainly would be more than pleased to sit down and discuss the specifics. Not that I can change the past, but as I indicated earlier, and perhaps my honourable colleague wasn't in the room, we look to the future, and indeed we learn from the past. And if there are protocols in place that provide for situations like this to take place, then certainly I want to be involved on the ground level to make sure that those protocols are reviewed and to ensure that what really should happen in the best needs, in the best interest of all Nova Scotians, is what takes place. And I would certainly make that commitment to my honourable colleague that we would move forward in that manner.
Honourable Member for Preston.
I'd like to thank the minister for that, and I knew that would be your answer, and I appreciate that. Could you give me a timeline when this could happen?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as always, in due time, as we can get out of the House, and if we can get beyond the pressing needs, and I meet with my stakeholders, I'd be more than happy to make the commitment to my honourable colleague to sit down at the earliest convenience, certainly within a 30-day parameter, Mr. Chair, to discuss the particulars and to see and to be brought up to speed, if I could, on the particulars of this case, and indeed see if we can move forward together.
Honourable Member for Preston.
That'd be very satisfactory. I realize the minister is new in the department, and something like this is going to take some time for you to review before you actually have a meeting and talk to staff on it. And it's an extremely unfortunate situation. And the situation is one that has repeated itself, I'm sure, in different circumstances all around. But all the years I've been in politics, I've been in politics a long, long time, this is probably the worst tragedy I've ever seen for a family. And it's been emotional. It's been very, very expensive for them financially. And it has taken more than just the individual that's working on this into the mix of things. It's taken an extended family into it as well. And that's been very, very heart-wrenching for everybody and extremely expensive. And we will supply the information, detailed information, just exactly how stressful this has been to the family. And for the record, and I know the minister can't comment on this, but for the record, I want to put the person's name on the record so we have it there so we understand who we're talking about. And I can do that. I have signed authorization from the person to do that. It's Sheener Williams of 24 Cherrybrook Road in Cherrybrook, and she's a lady from the black community, just so the minister knows. Now, getting on with other issues, and again, I thank the minister for agreeing to meet on this topic and see if we can't work through this and again ensure this never happens to another Nova Scotia family. On housing issues, again, I can't stress enough how pleased I am with the department and their staff when it comes to housing grants. And I want the minister to know that. I want that to be on the record. We have a lot of very difficult situations in our community, as all communities do in Nova Scotia, but we have a lot of older families that have homes that they've worked all their lives to get, and anything that the department can do, and they've been very, very helpful, I must admit, in doing things and helping people in the community stay in their homes is very, very important. And I wanted to make sure that the minister is aware that the staff we have working at that level has done an excellent job, has really helped us, and not us, because not us that help, it's the people in our community that help. And if they can't help, they tell us why, they explain it very carefully, and they go on from there. And sometimes they can offer alternatives that may be suitable, sometimes they're not, but at least they try and they do everything they can. And they do really care about the people that they're working with. And that goes from the person that answers the phone to the person that signs off on the agreement. So I want that on the record for the staff, and I can't express my gratitude enough on behalf of my constituents of the work they do and try to help. But I really want to push the minister to make sure they go after the federal government to get more money for the program, a more generous amount of money for each person, and the times and the income they have, because that is the key to this. We've got our population is getting older, and in my area, the community hasn't had the opportunity in some areas of my community that other parts of Nova Scotia have had, and that is starting to show up now when the pensions aren't as high as they should be. The homes are in bad shape to start when they retire, and they just deteriorate more when they physically can't do the work themselves, and the work gets on and on. So it's a worsening situation. Now, the families are incredible. They really help the seniors, and seniors are held in very high regard in the community, but they need the money to buy the materials. And again, we really have to look at that. And I'm going to ask also of the minister if there's any special programs that can go into the black communities and that would help them, considering some of the situations that have happened in the past.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank my honourable colleague for his comments about the staff, because I can't think of a greater compliment, Mr. Chair, than for a minister to receive the goodwill from the members of this chamber in regards to the very valuable and dedicated staff. I made reference in my opening comments about the over 1,100 employees and over 50 offices. So indeed, to to the staff of the department, I say a huge thank you, and thank you to my honourable colleague for putting that on the record, because all too often, as elected members, we do deal with some of the more difficult and more frustrating cases, and to know that the staff is handling them in a manner that is professional and with all due respect certainly makes me, as the Minister of the Department, feel very proud. And I want to thank you for those comments. And as well, in your statement, in your comments, you were talking about the need to press the federal government. I want to assure my honourable colleague that there will be many issues that we will certainly move forward and continue to press the federal government on. But housing is one that the federal government, certainly through Phase 1 and Phase 2, we were able to move forward with some housing projects. And now, as we take into context, of course, the Federal Housing Trust, and as we develop the protocols around that commitment, certainly we will be continuing to work in a cooperative manner with our federal brethren to move those issues forward. As my honourable colleague well knows, as I made reference in my opening statements, we have some unique situations here because we are one of the original founding provinces. We have homes in Nova Scotia. First of all, we have a very high percentage of home ownership, and indeed we also have a very high percentage of older homes, and it makes it even more important and more pertinent to the government of Nova Scotia to have those very serious discussions with the federal government to ensure that those factors are taken into account, whereas some of our other provinces across the country may not be as in the same situation as we are in those two regards. Now, specifically to my honourable colleague's question regarding black initiatives, I have to say that I'd be pleased to sit down and discuss that with my honourable colleague, and indeed with my colleague, the Minister responsible for African Affairs for Nova Scotia, because, Mr. Chair, as our department deals with all Nova Scotians, we deal with need on a cross the province basis, and that does not preclude certainly any community, but indeed includes all Nova Scotians. But of course, I would be more than pleased to sit down and discuss that with my honourable colleague, as well as the Minister responsible for African Affairs.
Honourable Member for Preston.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that commitment. I want to table a document here that I received a little bit late on the other issue with that home I talked about. It basically gives you the authorization to discuss that here in this chamber if you wish to do so. And I wouldn't ask for that today, but I can come back at a later date if you wish to do that. But that gives you the authorization, and it's notarized, so you know it's not something that somebody made up, which I normally you're not allowed to do. Also, just one quick question, and this is an unusual request. I would like if the minister could possibly come into my community, and there's some living conditions I would like you to see firsthand, and I would like to do this on an unofficial basis, that you could go and visit some people to see the homes they're living in, and this will be a friendly visit to talk to people and just say hello. No commitment that you're going to do anything, nothing like that. I just want to see what I deal with every day, and that you can go and see some of the people and say hello, no more than that. So when you come back and you're negotiating with the federal government, you know what we're trying to accomplish in communities, and it's just not my community. There's many communities like this in areas I represented before. The same situations existed, and I want you to see this, you personally, to see this firsthand, so you know that when you're there fighting that for more money and a more generous thing from the federal government, that you can visualize these people and their homes in your mind, that you know that you're doing for them, and these people may never apply for a grant.
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague across the way, and indeed to all members of this House. Time is such a valuable thing, and as we all reflect on the hours that we've spent in this chamber and the hours that we spend or are about to spend, or the hours that we spend in our jobs as MLAs and indeed as ministers. There are only so many hours in the day, and we all have numerous tasks to juggle, Mr. Chair, and everyone feels those pressures and those strains. Certainly, upon being appointed Minister of Community Services, I began to reflect upon what type of personal causes or what type of personal commitments I would like to make and champion. And having been born and raised in this province, having spent all of my years here in Nova Scotia, I realize that there are indeed many aspects and many parts of Nova Scotia that I myself have not visited. Now, my honourable colleague's riding is not one of those. I have indeed on many occasions been to my honourable colleague's riding, and of course he would know that I taught school on the Eastern Shore for many years, and am familiar with quite a few of the communities along the area as well. But certainly, Mr. Chair, I'd be more than pleased to visit all 52 ridings in the province in the days ahead, if indeed my schedule allowed for it. And alphabetically, says the honourable member from Antigonish. And indeed, Mr. Chair, I would love to work my way across the province, get to know some of the stakeholders and the service providers and the staff and the individuals that I will work with and deal with each and every day. So while I can't commit to a specific date or a specific time frame, I certainly would be more than pleased to visit the riding of my honourable colleague and walk and talk and meet with the fine folks of Preston, and indeed in an attempt to make my way around the province, Mr. Chair, and fulfill my requirements as Minister of Community Services for the entire province of Nova Scotia.
Honourable member for Preston.
Thank you very much, and I understand the time restraints as a minister has, being a former minister myself, and it's pretty tough, and it's going to get tougher, I can tell you that, as you go through the process. With those comments, I again want to thank the minister for straightforward answers. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn that over to our House Leader to continue the questioning.
Honourable member for Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. How much time is left on our hour?
Till 2:56.
6? Okay. I too, Madam Minister, want to welcome you to your new portfolio. And I don't know if you know my background, but prior to a political career that's now in the 28th year, I was a social worker for the City of Sydney before that, and for 10 years, and did a bit of reading at that time about the changes that were made in the Department of Community Services, which it's now known. I go back to reading books about the Elizabethan Poor Laws in Nova Scotia, and then giant strides forward were made when they called it the government took it over and called it the Department of Welfare in Nova Scotia. And then it moved from that to the Department of Social Services in Nova Scotia, and then it moved from there to the Department of Community Services and Housing. So here we are today with the Department of Community Services and Housing. And also today we have the days or the age of computers in that particular department. And I can recall, Madam Minister, when I was working in municipal social services, which was called the front lines of that time of dealing directly with clients. And I had a motto in those days that when in doubt, give, you know, to our social workers and people who were dealing with clients on a daily basis. And unfortunately, if there's one thing that's happened in the department, and I certainly, it's certainly no reflection on you or the people working in the department today, it's a fact of life that we're into the computer age, and people dealing with clients today in that department, basically they're dealing with statistics, and they're dealing with everybody in what I would refer to as a melting pot. If you're eligible, you get it. If you don't, there's no gray area, except in some emergency areas. But on a whole, the discretion for workers to deviate from the policy is not there. anymore. And workers will be the first to lament that. You know, so I think perhaps, and I'm going to say a little bit more about that, and then I would expect you to respond to my opening question. But there are some, and then I have a question, specific question for you. But anyway, the problem has been that field workers, on frontline social workers, don't have the latitude in dealing with clients that they once had in Nova Scotia. And I'm not so sure that that's a good thing. I'm not so sure that it's a good thing that the Department of Community Services should pride itself on balancing its budget, rather, providing service to those in need in Nova Scotia. It seems to me that the former is taking precedent over the latter. And I had a chance before to question your deputy minister at some point. I forget when it was now, but it had something to do with, I think, one of the committees of the House dealing with community services. And I lamented the fact that certainly your deputy minister and your senior people are well qualified. But I lamented the fact that graduate social workers are no longer running the Department of Community Services at the deputy minister level and in senior positions in some cases. We used to have people running the Department of Community Services or social services at the doctorate level in degree, in social work degrees, and certainly at the master's level. And their whole concern was trying to make life better for those in Nova Scotia who are less fortunate than we in this House are. And it seems to me that the policies of the department have been moved slightly, if not dramatically in some cases, away from that mission statement to a mission statement of balancing the books in that particular department. And indeed, the previous minister of that department took great pride in the fact that his department came in under budget. As a former person working in that field, that would be the last thing that I would want to say to Nova Scotians, that we save money off the backs of the poor people of this province. And I believe that there has to be a rethinking of the mission statement of this department. And I give you that as food for thought. Can you tell me whether or not you've had any discussions about the mood of the people working in your department, or any representation from the Nova Scotia Association of Social Workers, for example, as to the possibility of the mission statement of your department being changed?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to say thank you to my honourable, esteemed colleague, 28 years in public life. I can honestly say, Mr. Chair, that I hope to emulate my honourable colleague and have as many successful years in public life. And I look forward to the day when I can look across the room and think back fondly on my years as well. And I know that I've had many discussions with my honourable colleague outside as well as inside this chamber, and we've shared some stories that I had learned from my father, who knew my honourable colleague well long before I, and so we've shared a few of those, and I've appreciated that opportunity. So I did indeed realize, Mr. Chair, that my honourable colleague had a social worker background. I didn't know in what capacity, so certainly I'm sure that he speaks quite passionately when he talks about the changes over the years that have come through and to the department, and you would know full and well, Mr. Chair, that we all know change can be good, and sometimes change can be just that, and that is change. So certainly, I want to make a couple of points about my honourable colleague's opening statements, and then answer his questions specifically. So while I appreciate the fact that the front line is the first line of defense and the first line of contact, and as MLA, certainly, I have experienced those frontline workers myself, and they are an amazing, dedicated group of individuals, and who indeed deserve the high praise of all members of this House as they work through the challenging days that they deal day in and day out with very challenging and sometimes very complex cases. And I know I share my honourable colleagues' kind words, indeed, that they do their very best under those circumstances that can sometimes be very stressful. So I also wanted to make reference that the challenge becomes, as my honourable colleague indicated, that we do not allow ourselves to become cases and case numbers. We don't take the personal out of what we do. And I say that in all honesty, in all humility, Mr. Chair, that we cannot allow ourselves to be so technologically connected that we lose the human touch. And so I share that concern with my colleague and certainly understand his comments in that regard. And I will, as the days come, the days ahead of me, I will investigate exactly what is at the discretion and what is available to those frontline workers. I believe there is emergency funding available and special need funding available should it be required. To what extent, I must acknowledge, Mr. Chair, I don't know the details to that, but certainly I will look into that myself to ensure that it does remain personal from the caseworker point of view. And as well, Mr. Chair, I will indicate that in my few short weeks in the department, I must indicate that the fine professionals that I find myself surrounded by at the senior level and indeed as I hope to work my way through the department with all of our employees, the fine level of professionalism is certainly something that I'm very proud of. And it's not about being of one profession or another, but I find myself being pleasantly and quite often pleased with the reception and the interaction that I have with my senior staff at the department. And I want to make a statement about assuring my honourable colleague. Quite often, I'm asked in a political capacity what it means to me to be a progressive conservative. And it's something that I learnt at a very early age. And I take this with me into this new department, but I think it's important that my honourable colleague knows that for me, being progressive conservative, and it's that I'll take with me to the department, has always meant that I pay my bills and I look after those and work with those who can't. And so it will not, while we celebrate the importance of balancing our budgets, which indeed is a grand celebration, in a broad sense, it is equally as important to ensure that we help those who are in most need of our assistance, Mr. Chair. So certainly I want to assure my honourable colleague that I will carry that thought with me, that it is not all dollars and cents, but indeed it is about programs and helping all Nova Scotians, and indeed those Nova Scotians who are most in need of this department. And directly to answer my honourable colleague's question regarding the mandate and the motto of the department, I have not, to this date, had the opportunity to go into detail with staff regarding that, as I've been immersed in the last 2 weeks in getting to know my department, getting to know my budget, and indeed preparing for the House. I haven't had an opportunity to do that, but I certainly want to thank my honourable colleague for bringing it to my attention that perhaps I should take a look at that and review indeed what it is and decide if that matches the government of the day. So I thank my honourable colleague for that, and certainly will take that into consideration.
Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the challenge is there, and certainly I would also welcome your department balancing its budget as long as your clients are looked after in this province and their needs are looked after. And I'll give you some examples. The challenges of the disabled in this province for special needs, special diet, special needs, prostheses, this kind of stuff, you know, there's always a cloud between what the department can do and what another department can do, and the client becomes very frustrated when they don't seem to be able to access some of these services that they need in order to perform their daily chores or to live normally on a daily basis. The other issue is the challenge, and this is a huge challenge, the challenge the single mothers face in this in Nova Scotia, or perhaps in other jurisdictions as well, but I know Nova Scotia better than any other place, and I know Cape Breton better than I know this part of Nova Scotia. But I can tell you the frustration that single mothers are going through in terms of their education requirements, that they're trying to get off the system by bettering their education in Cape Breton, the ones that I deal with, and also the problems they're having with the court system regarding payments from delinquent fathers, and the problems they're having in accessing student loans, because the policy of your department, Minister, I don't know whether you're even aware of this yet, but it's discriminatory in the fact that if a person, a single mother, or anybody for that matter, that's on community services assistance, applies for a student loan, they're cut off their assistance, you know, and expected to live on the student loan, but not, Madam Minister, are they cut off when they get the student loan? They're cut off when they apply for the student loan. You know, and that's a very frustrating experience for people who are trying to go to university to get the necessary education that they can get off the system, as they say. You know, and that's the term that they use. They want to get off the system. And some of these single mothers that I deal with are very bright, you know, and they because of circumstances surrounding their marriage, they find themselves in a situation that, for the most part, was not of their doing. But they want to get off the system, they want to get a better education so they can go out and contribute in the communities in which they live, and in particular the community I know best, my community. And there's the whole matter of the 2-year program at community college versus the 4-year program in university. And there's some discriminatory practices going on in that particular regard right now, whereas there seems to be more access to a 2-year program in my area than there is to a 4-year program at the bachelor's level, and perhaps to go beyond that, to perhaps another level, such as a BED, you know, and which a lot of the people that I deal with, constituents of mine, would like to be able to access a BED. Very bright people, and if they had that, they could go out and contribute not only to the community, but look after their family. So those are challenges that they face, and again, you know, practices of the department sometimes are discriminatory there, and I'm sure that some of those have probably been brought to your attention already, you know, and particularly with the frustration that some of your line workers have when they say, look, I'd like to help you, but I can't. The policy does not allow me to do that, you know, and so it's a serious problem for them when what do they do? If they apply for a student loan, they run the risk of being cut off assistance. Now, do they run that risk and try to make it on the student loan when it comes in, or they just say, well, I'm not going to bother this year, I'm just going to continue to get social assistance because I need the ongoing and the certainty of support on a monthly basis for my children, you know, and that's a serious dilemma that these women have. And I say women here, Madam Minister, because they're the most vulnerable. They're the ones that are most affected in our community. And it seems to me that the department should have some kind of a special policy to assist single mothers who want to, not just to assist them, but to encourage them to continue to upgrade their academic qualifications so they can do what they dearly want to do, is not support their own children without the need for public assistance. And that's a goal that is consistent with the ones that I talk to. That's what they want. They don't want to be, as they say, on the system. You know, they want to be independent of the system. So I think it would be good business practice, if nothing else, for your department to set that procedure in motion to make it easier for them to do that. Just like your comments on that, Madam Minister.
Honourable Minister of Community Services. Yes. Yeah, 256.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to my honourable colleague, I appreciate his, again, his heartfelt comments as they relate. And I understand when you say that it's not just single moms, but that tends to be the category that a lot of the cases that you're referencing certainly fall into. And in my learning curve in this department, I've been very pleased with some of the programs that even I didn't realize were there, Mr. Chair, and I know that my honourable colleague recognizes the programs that are there, but certainly the two-year program, we have a phenomenal group of individuals who work with our clients to ensure that the programs that they need are best served, Mr. Chair. And sometimes we find that the programs that we best can help with are the coming out of high school programs, the literacy programs, and certainly the two-year program that my honourable colleague referenced would of course provide a wealth of opportunities in Nova Scotia, given the wonderful community college program that we have here in Nova Scotia that I know a lot of people are taking advantage of and realizing the full potential of those two-year programs. And Mr. Chair, I also would also reference the fact that we have in existence the opportunity for other programming to assist. We of course have the National Child Benefit, which assists our clientele. We have the Nova Scotia Child Benefit, which assists our clients. And one that I'm extremely pleased about, of course, Mr. Chair, as I referenced earlier, is the PharmaCare program, which again can assist those income assistant clients of ours who find themselves in a position where the costs of certainly of the PharmaCare for their children may be prohibitive for them to move forward. So that program that we're rolling out this year is one that I think can make a huge difference for indeed for our clients who most need our assistance when it comes to these types of programs. And my honourable colleague also mentioned those special need cases and situations, and indeed there are quite a list. I was reading the list that specifically indicates the special needs, whether it's emergency dental or eyewear or those types of special needs or a special diet, indeed, Mr. Chair, that's required, that the caseworker will work with the client to ensure that those special needs are addressed and are dealt with. So certainly those special need cases, there is a component available for that. The other specific reference that my honourable colleague made regarding the maintenance, although I know it's out of my purview and certainly would not pretend to speak for the Minister of Justice, but I know that there are moves afoot within the Department of Justice to help in some of the shortcomings or help in some of the casework, the caseload, as my honourable colleague has referenced the additional staff that will be brought online to assist, again, those who are most in need of our help. So I welcome my honourable colleague's comments about the need to go even further, and in the days to come I certainly hope to be able to look and analyze the details of the department and indeed move forward in some of those areas where we might be able to fill that gap, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
I know my time is drawing near here, but I'll be back later because there's some other questions I would like to ask, but just to comment on that, what we're talking about here and what I talked about earlier is the problem with deadbeat dads, you know, in the system, and you know, it would make the lives of the vulnerable people that I'm talking about a lot easier if the courts, in a timely fashion, and I know the Minister of Justice is concerned about this as well, would ensure that those people who owe their children money pay the children the money, you know, and in a timely fashion, so that these people are not subject to the going back and forth to community service and saying my check didn't arrive now, and the community services would then lend them the money, you know, and then claw it back, you know, and it becomes a serious problem for them. So hopefully a two-pronged approach from your department and the Minister of Justice and his department would make that process run a lot smoother than it is now. And, you know, and it's all about enforcement. It's all about having the tools to do the job in both departments, and I realize that. And the other thing is that when I left community services in Sydney, municipal social services it was called then, and went to the lofty position as mayor from that job in Sydney, I thought that I was going into a much more difficult job. And unfortunately for me, I guess, or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you're looking at, the job followed me into the mayor's chair down in Sydney. And I had an open door policy in dealing with my former clients, and I told the people who were working in our social service department to have an open door policy with their clients. And all too often, that's not the case today, where people have to call and make appointments sometimes a week, 2 weeks. And as I always felt, that these people need assistance. The people that have to access your department need it now. They don't need it in 2 weeks' time or a week's time. And they don't need to be confronted now with locked doors and intake workers who are behind a screen and all this kind of stuff. You know, I think that it's intimidation there sets in. And I'm just wondering why we've moved so far in that direction in this particular department over the last few years, that it makes it harder for the clients to access the service and harder for them to sit down and talk face-to-face with workers. I don't know whether it's a problem of the number of clients that each worker has, the availability of the workers, or whether it's a safety on their part, whether they've tightened up security in the departments, but certainly access to the department at the front line is not as easy as it used to be. And I would hope that someday we could get back to a system where if the mayor of Sydney can talk to a client face-to-face in his office without a security fence there, you know, I'm sure that clients should be able to talk to community services workers in the community without having to first of all, make it a week or 2 week appointment because they're busy, or secondly, be subjected to the kind of security that seems to be in place now. Okay.
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I was, as you were speaking, I was reflecting on, again, on my days in the classroom when your door is always open. And indeed, you're always accessible. And I used to marvel at some colleagues who would say, "You don't publish your telephone number in the telephone book, do you?" And I would say, "Well, of course I do. That's the way people can contact you." So certainly I share my colleagues' desire to have that one-on-one relationship and that open door policy. And though I would never speak to the specifics of a case, I was very pleased to be able to meet with the mother of indeed one of my clients just the other day here at Province House, and it was very satisfying for me and for the mother. And so that was an opportunity for me to have that one-on-one. And certainly I would share my colleagues' feelings in that manner. When it comes to the department, again, occupational health and safety is the utmost concern, and that indeed would be the rationale and the reasoning behind some of those barriers perhaps that my honourable colleague was referencing. But certainly I share your open door policy, Mr. Chair. I would share that with my colleague, and certainly would hope that I could continue to have that myself, as my honourable colleague does himself.
Okay, that's the time allotment. The House will recess for a comfort break for 4 minutes with the intention of reconvening in 5 minutes.